You've seen some of the highlights here of your career, but I got a sense that there's one guy you just didn't want to get in the ring with. That one person that you said, I don't want a piece of. And why don't you tell us who that might be?
Well, Greg, a lot of people might be surprised by this, but that'd be Tim the Swede Magnuson. This guy's been on my back for my entire career, and he's been giving me hell. So he's the guy I fear the most. Yeah, yeah. Is he here? Tim here?
Where is he? Lights up. Is
Maybe
Magnuson here? The
maybe
guy
after lunch. Tim.
Florida a week ago and aren't back yet. That's why I got this autograph.
Well, I knew he'd duck me again. I knew he would duck me again. Yeah, my father Jack is here. Kind of like my American Express, I don't leave home without him. Did I ever think I would box? Never. Buffalo boxing history is huge. We've had 6 world champions that many people don't know about. I was hoping to be the 7th. I didn't become world champion, but I am. All the while, I was trying to keep my promise to stay in Western New York. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. The Don Kings and the Sugar Ray Leonards and the Bob Arams, the biggest names in boxing today, the promoters, offered me quite a bit of money to leave Western New York. They said, you can't become a heavyweight contender in Western New York. It has been happened since the 60s. And I said, no, I think I have the blank check at home from Don King, and he signed it, and we turned it down. And with a contract as big as this table. So we tried to read that in the airplane ride home. It was this thick. So that's another reason we didn't do it. But we said, we're going to stay here in Western New York. It's got a lot of great history. There's a lot of great sports fans here. And they laughed at me. They said, you'll never do it. And a few years later, about 3 years later, they were calling back saying, can we come to Buffalo and help you out? And, we said, no, we're doing fine on our own here. So we proved them wrong. We became a world contender, and we did become the biggest ticket seller. I say we because the marketing genius over here. The biggest ticket seller in the sport of boxing in the United States. One punch. I took all the punches, so not one punch he didn't take.
described as this. Joe Mesi isn't like most of the other pugs you'll come across in this game. As soon as he opens his mouth, you know he's different than the rest of them. He's articulate and insightful, and he expresses himself like maybe your neighbor, the school teacher, would. And that's fitting because, after all, he does have an education that allows him to teach school if that's the path he decides he wants to go down when all of this is over. He's not mean-looking or imposing like, say, Mike Tyson. And he doesn't particularly look like a fighter. His jet black hair, mahogany-colored eyes, olive-colored skin. And this is an article. I got.
Did you write this?
And I'm getting better. This is good. And look at the women. They're going crazy. This is what they say. Let me conclude this. Girls, please. And handsome features make him look like any other unassuming Italian guy you might see making pizza behind the counter at your local pizzeria. This is what it says. While he's a big guy and in good shape, he's not a freakish giant with bulging muscles like a lot of these other heavyweight lurkings around the country. And maybe all that is what makes him extremely special. And this is an article about you. Is this an accurate portrayal of you?
I don't know.
So if I were going down to Faulkner in the pizza parlor, you know what I say, Baby Joe?
You tell me. I thought you wrote that. I don't know. No. It's. I mean, a lot of it's fair. I mean, hence the nickname Baby Joe, which I've always hated. But I'm the youngest in the family. Even amongst my cousins, I was the baby, and I was the smallest, believe it or not. And my grandparents and my aunt and my father said Baby Joe, but I've heard Baby Joe so much in my ear that I'm thinking Baby Joe. Well, no way. I'm gonna get beat up in the locker room. Baby Joe, I can't. And they wouldn't have it any other way. So I remember my first professional fight in Harlem. It was in Harlem, New York, and they introduced me as Baby Joe, and I said, "Oh no, my God!" But it has now stuck, and that's what people call me in not only the boxing community but everywhere. So it is what it is.
Another article in the New York Times says, would-be Marciano faces test. How much was the Rocky Marciano Italian heavyweight champion? Was that part of your process?
It became part of it, yeah. As I became more and more of a fan of the sport, he became more and more of somebody that I looked up to. Obviously, his record, his undefeated record, 49-0. One of the very few heavyweights to retire undefeated. I'm one of the others, but he holds the records for the most wins. There was a little while I thought about challenging that record, but it would be too long and too hard and too many punches. But I then have had lunch a handful of times with the Marciano family in New York City, who are friends of ours and continue to stay in touch with us. And they gave me the blessing when I fought at Madison Square Garden. It was just a few fights back. You know, if anyone's going to beat his record, we want you to beat it. And they continue to stay in touch with us. They were great. It was a great couple of days that we spent with them. They're a great family.
The whole world, at least certainly the whole Western New York world, watched your fight in Las Vegas. As you know, just clearly dominated the first 8 rounds, and then the 9th round. Kind of walk us through that, if you can recall.
I was hoping you could. I don't really remember much.
I was just going to say that. Maybe I'll get jacked. But.
Had our contract with HBO, and we were the co-feature to Shane Mosley and Winky Wright, 2 of the biggest names in boxing at the time in 2004, March 13th. And I was fighting Vasily Jurov. Now, Vasily Jurov was a cruiserweight. That's 1 under heavyweight. He was undisputed cruiserweight champion, held all 3 titles. One of the best cruiserweights, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions in the world. He was an Olympic gold medalist, and in the 1996 Olympic Games, he won the Best Boxer of the Tournament award, beating Antonio Tarver, beating a lot of big names, again, in the cruiserweight division. But he decided to move up to heavyweight, had a couple of successful heavyweight fights, and then it became my turn. He was going after the heavyweight title. People would say, why are you going to fight this cruiserweight? He's a little smaller than me, and if you know boxing, I'd rather fight the bigger, stronger guys. That's the way I was better at fighting the bigger, strong guys. The smaller guys are faster and caused me problems throughout my career, if you knew boxing. I was pretty fast, but the faster they are, that's the advantage that they have. And he's very fast, and he's very strong, and he's left-handed. And I don't like left-handed people. No, just kidding.
You may leave now.
If I see a sign left-handed, I think immediately, man, I'm going to get hit with that left hand all day. So, but I did very, very well. That's the best fight. That's the best performance of my career. And many people kind of cringe when I say that because he's the toughest guy that I fought. I hit him with everything. He didn't even take a step backwards. I have so much respect for him. But I was clearly winning this fight, clearly winning it every round, hands down. I'm going to win a decision easily. The first 8 rounds, he barely touched me. And at the end of the 9th round, with approximately 12 seconds left, as the video shows, he hit me in the back of the head, and I took a knee. And after that, I really don't. It was foggy. It was just foggy. And this is boxing. I've been hit hard before, and I've been foggy before in sparring, and it happens. But the 10th round, I just don't remember. I don't remember the 10th round, and I probably would have easily. I did win, but would have much easier won the fight if had I just moved around and just stayed away. But as I mentioned earlier, kind of the animal instinct in me, I thought it looked bad that I took a knee, even though I was winning the fight easily. The bell rang, and I went right out after him, and people were wondering why I did that. I don't know why, because I don't recall. But, and the last round looked awful. I got knocked down 3 more times, and it made it a close fight. I won it unanimously, but, by very close points. And, a few days went by, to talk about the injury now, but a few days went by, and I had a little headache, and I was still a little foggy. And I'm an advocate for safety. We have always been that way. Believe me, my mother made us that way. I spoke to groups much like this throughout my boxing career about safety. The fact that we have to get tested before every fight in order to get licensed. And my argument was, well, we need to get tested after our fights. This is before my injury. We need to get tested after our fights. This will prevent injuries in the future.
What's your highlight, Joe?
Highlight of my career?
Yep. Other than being here today.
Here, this is one of them. The Olympic torch was one of them.
It's not an overstatement to say that you are the 3rd franchise in Buffalo. When we think the Bills, the Sabres, and an individual by the name of Baby Joe Mesi. I mean, congratulations. A tremendous, tremendous career. And we wish you nothing but the best as you go into this next chapter of your life. And thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me.